Board of County Commissioners acts as a quasi-judicial body when it hears requests for rezonings and conditional use permits. Applicants must provide competent, substantial evidence establishing facts or expert witness opinion testimony showing that the request meets the zoning code and comprehensive plan criteria. Opponents must also testify as to facts or provide expert testimony whether they like or dislike a request is not competent evidence. The board must then decide whether the evidence demonstrates consistency and compatibility with the comprehensive plan and the existing rules in the zoning ordinance, property adjacent to the property to be rezoned, and the actual development of the surrounding area. The board cannot consider speculation, non-expert opinion testimony, or poll the audience by asking those in favor or opposed to stand up or raise their hands. If a commissioner has had communications regarding a rezoning or conditional use permit request before the board, the commissioner must disclose the subject of the communication and the identity of the person, group, or entity with whom the communication took place before the board takes action on the request. Likewise, if a commissioner has made a site visit, inspection, or investigation, the commissioner must disclose that fact before the board takes action on the request. Each applicant is allowed a total of 15 minutes to present their request, unless the time is extended by a majority vote of the board. The applicant may reserve any portion of the 15 minutes for rebuttal. Other speakers are allowed 5 minutes to speak. Speakers may not pass their time to someone else in order to give that person more time to speak.
Call this meeting to order. Welcome to the August 3rd version of the Planning and Zoning Board. And we'll start this evening off with our invocation by my good friend Rabbi Olshansky. If you'll all stand, please.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, our God, God of our fathers and mothers, we thank you for the opportunity to live in a country where we choose our own leaders. While we know that freedom is a gift from you, we thank you also for the men and women who have defended our freedom, often with the sacrifice of their lives, and for those who still defend our freedom today. We ask your blessing on our leaders at all levels of government, local, state, and national, and pray that you will inspire them to remember that they hold office in order to work for the well-being of the public as a whole, and not for any narrow special interests. We pray also that you will inspire our leaders and all of us to remember the words of the prophet Micah. You have been told, humans, what is good and what God requires of you, only to do justice and to love kindness and to walk modestly with your God. May we all remember how to walk modestly with God, and may we do so. Amen.
Amen. Rabbi, would you mind, you can sit. Would you mind telling everybody a little bit about your ministry, because it's rather unique?
6 you, Commissioner. I'm a second career rabbi. I was ordained 6 years ago, 6 years ago, after 4 years of intensive study, 70 courses plus a thesis. I served 5 years in a large synagogue in New Jersey as the second rabbi and head of education, and then decided to move here to Brevard County not quite 4 years ago. My wife and I love living in Melbourne. We are enjoying living in this county. We came here without a plan, and we just knew we wanted to live here. And when I got here, I started calling the local universities and found that University of Central Florida needed someone to teach in Judaic studies. So I started teaching there in January of 14. A couple months into my tenure there, a faculty colleague told me that his synagogue had had a falling out with their rabbi in the Orlando area. So I started serving synagogue there in the summer of 14, served there for 3 years, and in the summer of 15, a member of the congregation who works at Rollins College told me that they needed somebody in Judaic studies. So I started teaching in Rollins in January of 16. So I now teach at both UCF and Rollins, and I do a lot of life cycle work both here in this county, weddings, hospital visits, funerals, bar and bat mitzvahs, baby namings, and also in the Orlando area. A lot of destination weddings in the Orlando area. So I say I'm semi-retired. My wife says I'm not. And above all, we enjoy living in Brevard And thank you, Commissioner, for this opportunity.
You're welcome. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and we have one resolution this evening. Ms. Lori Scott, would you come forward, please?
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. We are here, and thank you for doing the resolution for Ms. Donna Griffin, who has been an employee of the election office for 30 years. And in politics, that's like 150 dog years because, you know, working in elections is a tough job, and can't imagine all she's done and the elections that she's run and the changes that she's seen in 30 years. But we're here today to honor her and also want to recognize her family in the audience because she couldn't have done what she's done for the voters of Brevard County without the love and support of her family. So stand up and wave, everybody, so we know. So that's her proud family back there, and we just thank them. We thank them for loaning her to us, and we call her in the office Mama D because she is the mother of the office to all of us, and she is just an invaluable asset to the voters of Brevard with her passion. And so we thank you, and I understand you have a resolution for her.
And Tim's going to take our picture.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can hold that.
Yeah, I'll hold it. Just get it there.
No, we keep-
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Could I have a motion to accept that resolution?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Anyone wish to vote no? Passes 5-0. Okay, we move into the consent agenda. Only have one item. Any thoughts, communication?
Move to approve it.
We have a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a second. Anyone wish to vote no? Passes 5-0. Moving into public comments.
I think she's wanting to table O.
That's 4. We're into 3. First comment card will be by Charles Tovey.
Charles Tovey, 2555 Roberts Road, Melbourne, Florida, 32940. I wrote on property rights, and I don't know what's on the agenda because there's only a brief description of items, but I want to express my concern for the property of what is now known Palm Shores and the environmental condition that is being destroyed, and all the things that I've presented prior to this in the past commission in the 8 years and there. Anyways, Commissioner Tobias, thank you for your initiative to look into the CRA monies, and thank you for finding $100,000 of taxpayer money that was embezzled from the taxpayer. Roads, schools, everything. And if there's fire, why don't we look into the smoke? And I don't know. I've been deprived of my right to live because the Palm Shores, the development in Palm Shores, right? Tear out my water line, murder all my pets, destroy everything I have. This is the county that did this last year. Took everything I had, or 3 years ago. Took everything I have and left me for dead. No way to make a living or sustain myself. And why? What did I do again? And all these concerns about all of everybody else has rights and issues, but don't let me turn around and make sure I put my address on the public speaking card. Yay. And we're not going to look into $100,000 worth of, no? While you destroy the environment and my property, it's a environmental priceless area in Florida. And I'm working on it. I will submit the information, and I do have witnesses about them filling in the lakes and cementing in the springs and all the wildlife things. So I am against, even though I'm deprived of going into Palm Shores and going to any other county meeting, I'm against it, and I express it wholeheartedly, and I have books and files of all kinds of information that's being neglected, just like the CRA monies that I filed the report on, and nobody looked into it but our great Commissioner Tobias. And we're just going to brush it under the rug and let it be happening. Meanwhile, people are being shot because they don't have a light on their bike, or they did a traffic infraction. But we're not going to investigate a $100,000, right? And if that's happening, what else is happening in that little town of ours, Palm Shores? I wasn't in Palm Shores, and that's why I put on my card, my property rights. What am I allowed to do? I can't do, I have to stay outside my house every day for 10 years, 2009 till now, excuse me.
Mary Sfar.
Let you get them first before my clock starts.
State your name, please.
Mary Spar.
Your address.
825 Clifton's Cove Court, Cocoa. And I'm here because we have an opportunity to improve the health of the Indian River Lagoon, and this opportunity arises only once every 7 years. And to start off, I'd like to bring to your attention that in the Save Our Indian River Lagoon project plan, the scientists weighed in on what needed to be done, and I've given you a quote from section 5.1 of the project plan. However, the scientists continued to voice concern about the restoration of the IRL in the absence of regulatory reform needed to prevent new development from adding more septic system and stormwater pollution to the lagoon. Therefore, updated regulations are needed as a complement to this plan to ensure timely and sustained success in restoring the health to the IRL. Please note we're spending $302 million on the project plan, but they say that updated regulations are needed as a complement to the plan. And the opportunity that has arisen now is the EAR process, which is the evaluation and appraisal process. And we have a chance to change the comprehensive plan to help the Indian River Lagoon. And there are several ways we could do that. And I want to know how concerned citizens and groups such as the Marine Resources Council, the Brevard Indian River Lagoon Coalition, the Sierra Club, and the League of Women Voters at Space Coast can participate in submitting ideas for the comp plan and how we can be involved in the discussion before it gets to the local planning agency. And that's why I'm here to ask this question. So I hope you'll ask the people that are implementing this EAR process that happens only 7 years. How can the public and people concerned about the lagoon participate? Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Thanks for your input. Okay, I have another one here that the person didn't put down what category they wanted to speak. Mike Hercala. What did you want to speak on, sir? Okay, I'll put you in place. No, I'll call you. We have you covered. Okay, that's all of our public comments. We'll move into public hearings.
Chairman, can you hear me? Okay.
I can.
We have several items on the agenda tonight which are proposed to be tabled, so I'm going to request, 3 of which are at the applicant's request and 1 of which is at staff request as a result of a procedural defect, and I'm going to ask that you advance those items on the agenda so that we can hear them and the audience doesn't have to stay all night in case they are tabled. So
Okay.
if you're amenable to that, those items are 4A, 4B, 4D, and 4O, and we'll just go in that order and then proceed from there.
Okay, so I need a motion for A and B to table.
Yeah, A and B have been requested by the applicant to be tabled to the December 7th, 2017 Board of County Commissioners meeting.
I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion to table A and B. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Anyone wish to vote no? Passes 5-0.
Item D is requested to be continued to the September 7th, 2017 Board of County Commissioners meeting. This is for the removal of a BDP and a conditional use permit.
I'll entertain a motion for a table.
So moved.
We have a motion to table.
Second.
And we have a second. Anyone wish to vote no? Passes 5-0.
Okay. And then we'll skip to item O. That's a proposal for a change of zoning classification from SEU to EU2. There was a procedural defect in that this item was not scheduled for the Planning and Zoning Board. Staff caught this, and we are recommending that the Commission table the item back to P&Z. Those dates are the dates of the next available date for the P&Z meeting is actually, the item can be heard at the LPA meeting on August 21st and could make it to the September 7th Board of County Commissioners meeting.
Okay, before we go any further with that, Eden, would you like to weigh in on this regarding procedure?
Yes, the code does require that this particular item, because it is an increase in residential density, that it go from the North Merritt Island Advisory Board to the Planning and Zoning Board and then to the Board of County Commissioners. So to keep the procedure clean under the code, we need to go back to the Planning and Zoning Board.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to table.
So moved.
We have a motion to table this item.
Second.
We have a second. Anyone wish to vote no? Passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the regular items, and we'll go back to item C. So item 4C is a proposal for a change of zoning classification from RU111 to RU19. It's a proposal on 0.576 acres on North Tropical Trail in North Merritt Island, proposing to split one lot into 3. I think the applicant's here as well.
Okay, 4C. Robert Donovan. This is your project?
Yes, sir, it is.
Do you have anything to say, or you just want to be here for questions?
No, I'm just here for questions. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Pleasure of the board.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. We have Mr. Barfield, you have the floor.
Yes, I'd just like to make sure we note that it's consistent with the future land use and with the required minor subdivision application. And just to note that for the record.
Okay, that's included? We're good? Okay. We have a motion, and you're going to second it?
Second.
Second. All those opposed? Anyone wish to say no? Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Okay, item E is a proposal for a conditional use permit for alcoholic beverages for on-premises consumption on .22 acres in Satellite Beach. This is the old Purple Porpoise building, and the proposal is to expand the CUP to allow for the manufacturing of craft beer and spirits on the site. I do want to clarify for the record that the BU1 zoning classification does not permit the wholesale from the brewery to a customer off-site. So the BU1 zoning limits the sale from the business to consumer transaction, so that it has to be consumed on-site if you were permitted this use.
On-site sales only.
Yes.
Pleasure of the board. That works better that way. Commissioner Barfield, you have the floor.
Yes, I'd like to see it, make sure this remains in conjunction with the restaurant. That would be a CUP would issue as long as it's in conjunction with the restaurant.
It'll be licensed to be a brew pub, so we will serve food and beer.
Okay.
Pleasure of the board.
Motion to approve?
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Anyone wish to vote no? Passes 5-0.
Okay, items F and G are related. Item F is a proposal for a small-scale comp plan amendment from planned industrial to residential 1 on 2.52 acres in North Merritt Island to allow for the development of a single-family residence.
Pleasure of the board. Commissioner Barfield?
I move to make a motion to approve this and PIP to 1 unit.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Anyone wish to vote no? Passes 5-0.
And item G is the companion zoning application to change the zoning classification from planned industrial park to AU for the same proposal for one single-family residence.
I move to accept.
We have a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a second. Anyone wish to vote no? Passes 5-0.
Item H. Item H is for a proposed conditional use permit for cement, concrete, and concrete building products by Preferred Materials on 1.96 acres off of US 1 in Melbourne to redevelop a concrete ready-mix plant. I think the applicant's here as well.
Okay, let's see who we have first. What's your name, sir?
Pat Berry, 5201 Southwest 13th Street.
Wait. I don't have your card.
I'm representing the owner. I'm representing the applicant.
Okay. Do you have something to say, or are you here for
I'm just here for comments, answer questions.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the first card I have is for Robert Schaff.
Robert Schaff, 2505 Schaff Lane, Melbourne, Florida, 32940. This proposed plant is behind my property. I know that years ago there used to be a cement plant there, and when I built my house it was there originally. And at that point in time it shut down, I guess, about 8 years ago. And now it's being proposed again. My concern is not necessarily having the plant there, because I understand we need things like that to build our county, is the runoff of the sand and also the water to keep the sand down, and not necessarily the machines that they produce it, because obviously there has been some great strides in the quietness of the machines and those type of things, and as far as the emissions that they put off, because they're electric machines now. It's actually the storage of the sand. Currently we have huge piles of asphalt, which they use for recycling the asphalt plant that's right next to this. But now they're going to be putting sand there, which also, years ago when it used to be there, I would come out, I happen to like black cars, and my car would be totally white in the morning from the sand coming and blowing across. There are no screens or barriers or sound walls currently in place for there to stop that from happening. And we do deal with some smells from the plant now, which quite honestly I built after the plant was there, so I understand it's my responsibility at that point in time. But with the environmental issues that we're having now in the county, with the lagoons and everything else, adding more runoff from those plants, what are we going to do for that? How are we going to control that? Part of keeping the dust down is watering it, and that creates the runoff issues. And that's my concern.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Staff, can anybody address that with regard to runoff, water runoff? Is it contained on that property?
I think, and the applicant's representative should be able to clarify this. There are county code requirements that manage that, but there's also additional DEP requirements that regulate this industry. So perhaps they can add more information about those above and beyond regulations that DEP necessitates.
Well, I know DEP is oversees that particular business. Okay. Would you like to address that? Yes, I'd like to hear what you have to say.
In today's world of cement plants, what we've learned is the concrete is structured. So the old days, it was just go put a concrete plant on a piece of ground. Today, it's more tightly regulated. I do a lot of concrete construction plants myself, and the sites are set up for drainage. The runoff is highly regulated by the DEP. It's monitored. They come out, they test you unannounced. They just show up, and any violations that are usually shut down on. There is nothing anticipated with regards to runoff because it's really it's a tight system what they do. And, I couldn't say anything else. Anything would be with dust or anything like that would only have to be from airborne products from a windy condition or something like that. As they don't, this plant that they are proposing in the CUP is the furthest away from Robert's property. I don't know that dust storms or dust storms if it would come up, so I can't really answer to that. But it's tightly regulated through the DEP and monitored.
Mark Stoller.
Hi, my name is Mark Stoller. I'm from 6191 North US 1, Melbourne. I own the storage lot that's directly adjacent to their property, to the asphalt plant's property where the cement trucks will be driving. Approximately 1,000 feet of it, I border them. There is a dust problem right now as there is. Just concerned. I would hope that they do something to, we had talked about it at a meeting, to alleviate the dust once they start up, because they'll have additional piles of probably lime rock, not to mention cement dust is very corrosive. Some of my tenants have already expressed interest in it because they get covered with lime dust as it is now. I just would hope that they do something to either wet the piles, but then that causes a runoff problem. And not to mention the traffic problem. I guess everybody's seen, since Girls has been open, everybody makes U-turns right in front of there. So it's going to add to that problem. But anyway, my main concern is dust. Noise is another one. But that's pretty much all I need to say.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Bruce Moya.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Bruce Moy. I'm the president of MBB Engineering. You're probably wondering why I'm here to speak on this item, being that as on the P&Z, we voted to approve this to bring it to you today. But since then, I was hired by some neighboring property owner, or people that have interest in neighboring properties. And I also attended the meeting, the neighborhood meeting that the applicant had with the neighbors. And upon reviewing their application and reviewing the Brevard County's codes, I think the application is fairly incomplete. It does not address several things in your code. Specifically, this property is not abutting a county or a private roadway. It's a landlocked piece of property that's only accesses through easement. Being the former county development engineer for several years for Brevard County, there was a long-standing interpretation that commercial and industrial properties cannot access via an easement. It has to have direct access onto a roadway. So that hasn't been addressed. Another thing that I think is really important is your performance standards. And I don't think the applicant has addressed any of those, and those are specific to issues such as smoke, dust and particulate matter, vibration, and noise. So I don't see anything in their application that addresses this whatsoever. As a matter of fact, in their application, they say that they're going to operate at the maximum allowable between the hours of 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. But I think everybody knows here that they will operate outside those hours because sometimes they make concrete at 3 o'clock in the morning. So if their operation is at the max during the hours where it has to be 75 decibels, how can they operate where the requirement is 65 if they're operating outside those hours? So I think there's a lot of information that they still need to present to this board. I think it's fairly incomplete. I think they need some time to bring these issues and address these issues. So I really think at this time, I think it'd be prudent to table this item until they can provide all that information in a comprehensive a manner so everybody can read it and understand that they can or cannot meet those standards. Thank you.
And I would like to disclose that I spoke to Mr. Moya on an associated subject to this, not on this particular subject, but on another subject, and he met in my office on July 31st. Staff, would you like to address anything that Mr. Moya just talked about?
We have no indication that any of the performance standards would be violated. I will say that the property owner currently has a permit in review right now, above and beyond violating any conditions, to propose a sound barrier around the plant to the north of them, but on the same site. So they are already doing a few things that are a little above and beyond any violation of code, and that's in review now by staff. But I don't know how I can speak to something they might do in the future.
Thank you. Commissioner Zanardi, you have the floor.
Yes. I was going to also disclose that I spoke with Mr. Moya. I didn't have a meeting with him, but I spoke with him on the telephone about this matter. Just a couple of the details. He expressed a couple of concerns about the dust and not addressing that in their application.
Commissioner Pritchett.
Yeah, I received a phone call from Mr. Moya also. He didn't tell me what he was going to address today, but he said he was going to bring up tabling the item. But we filed all this before the meeting anyways with all of our conversations. But since you started.
Okay, Commissioner Barfield.
I'd like just to ask our attorney, is there any conflict with Mr. Moya being on the P&Z?
He has disclosed his position, and he has the ability to come in and represent a person before this board.
That was just for my own knowledge. Okay.
Pleasure of the board. I don't think so. Would you like to speak? Sure.
As far as the application process, I mean, the DEP is the highest regulating agency we've got in the state of Florida, and they have strict guidelines that we have to follow. I feel in most cases that when you present an FDEP permit to a county, it stipulates the requirements have been met and satisfied through the state of Florida. And 99.9% of the time, it's recognized by the county stating that they're in compliance.
Thank you. Commissioner Tobias, you have the floor.
Sir, one quick question. This apparently goes back to prior to my tenure on the commission. It looks like March 2016. I had the pleasure of watching an older P&Z meeting. Can you speak to what your position may be on the rezoning of the parcel across the land from, the whatever the industrial park to RU 215? I guess the 424 units, because it's my understanding that was a point of contention with you with the cement facility when that came before P&Z. So my question is, if this was to go through, or is that objection potentially pulled if that were to come forward, or would you still have that objection?
I'm representing the CUP application for the smaller portion of land. Mark Marine he's one of the executive owners of the preferred property. He's here. Maybe you could offer any assistance in that. But that was before my time, John.
Mine as well. So.
Mark? Sure. You want to address that?
Absolutely. Mark Marine, 404 Sotheby Way, DeBerry, Florida. Correct, Commissioner Tobias. We had a proposal on the property contiguous to us on the west. We obviously went on record as being opposed to it, a large apartment complex development that we were opposed to. Since then, the prospective developers had come a couple times to meet with us in my office to talk about potential opportunities. We're still active. As a matter of fact, I spoke to Mr. Moya on Friday. We're still very concerned with what it could look like, but somewhere along the way we recognize and acknowledge that they do have a right to be able to develop that property. So we would be amenable to some kind of compromise as we move forward. As you heard the clerk say, that we do have a sound curtain being proposed to be put up to mitigate some of the dust that has been recognized by some of the property owners. And being a good neighbor and having a open house a couple times and being able to talk to some of the neighbors, we're being very proactive to try to ensure that we can all peacefully coexist. So to answer your question, yes, we were opposed to the last development, but we're amenable to some future opportunities we recognize they're going to want to develop.
So I appreciate the answer. So if that was, and I don't know if this is coming forward, but say that was to come forward in the next P&Z meeting, the same 424 unit that you stood up, would you still at this time be opposed, assuming there were no changes to that plan?
Assuming there are no changes to that plan, our position would still be the same.
Thank you.
Commissioner Zanardi, you have the floor.
I had a question, and maybe perhaps you could answer it. You talked about the sound wall. I mean, how effective, and excuse my ignorance, but how effective is that in regards to preventing the dust problem? Because it's not just about a dirty car, it's about people breathing in that stuff, and that's the stuff that concerns me.
Preferred, as Mark just said, they've, just being proactive, have initiated the application process back in April for a proposed sound wall. It's basically a curtain that they are working with a company trying to put it up. It's not required. It hasn't been. It's not a complaint. They haven't been recorded of outside of their decimals of operation. They're just voluntarily putting it up because they realize it's an industrial. Even though this is an industrial park or industrial zone property, and there's adjacent neighbors, proactive as they are, they've got maybe 20 plants throughout the state of Florida. They're just trying to be neighborly.
And many developers make a boatload of concessions, sometimes even to appease the neighbors. But my concern, again, is the dust. It's not the noise, as much as I am concerned about the dust floating around.
It would assist it. I think what's being proposed is 300 feet long by 20 feet high. It would definitely assist in it. It basically acts as a curtain because what you're doing is funneling the wind. The dust is all carried by the wind. And to clarify, it's not cement dust, it's sand that's being carried. Cement's in a closed container. So the curtain would just deflect the wind from blowing that way, and it would just stall out and probably.
And I hope you understand my
pre-fall.
concern, because in
Sure.
the beginning, with the explanation, you says, well, I don't know about the dust problem, so that sounds to me like maybe you weren't aware of it or you weren't concerned about it.
It's highly regulated in all facilities. You can go on any road on a windy day and have a dust problem. Is there a dust problem when there's no wind? Absolutely not. Is there a dust problem when there's high wind? I mean, chances are higher in an industrial zone versus a non-industrial zone. And that's why y'all have industrial zones, is so you can have manufacturing. One good advantage about this, which would minimize to Brevard County, is that they have access to the railroad right there. So there's actually a spur that's already comes off of there. And it's in conversation with the clients of possibly putting in a drop pit and being able to bring their aggregates in through rail cars, which would minimize trucks in and out, and would ultimately minimize, dust and airborne products, because trucks going down a wet road 50 times is now dry. So they're looking into those options just to enhance it, because that's the zone that it's in and it's available. So hopefully I helped you.
Thanks.
Commissioner Barfield.
Yeah, have a question for staff. You talked about DEP, the Florida statutes. Do we know that if those statutes, are they more stringent, or does our regulations, are they sufficient? I mean, I'm trying to say is the state statutes still cover the same things that we're saying in our local statutes?
Yeah, they do, and they are above and beyond our code.
Any more comments from the board? Pleasure of the board.
I'd first like to defer to you. What's your district?
I'm good with it.
Make a motion that we approve this.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Passes 4-1. Commissioner Tobias being the nay vote.
Okay, thank you. Item I is a proposal for a change of the zoning classification from RU210 to RU215 on a .83 acre parcel in the Cocoa Beach area. And they are seeking the RU215 zoning with a BDP limiting development to 10 units. The existing zoning that they have would allow for 8 units today.
I have a card for the applicant. Do you have anything you wish to say, or are you just here for? Just here for questions. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Pleasure of the board. Comments?
I make a motion to approve with the BDP to limit to 10 units.
We have a motion to limit to 10 units. Do we have a second? Second. We have a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Okay, item 4J is a proposal for a conditional use permit for alcoholic beverages for on-premises consumption by the Vieira Development Corporation in Brevard County on 85.71 acres on Stadium Parkway.
Pleasure of the board.
I move to approve with the planning and zoning's recommendations with the, that's compliant with the exhibit map.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor vote aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Okay, item 4K is a proposal for a small-scale comp plan amendment going from residential 2 to residential 4, proposed by Chrysophilia Enterprises on 1.35 acres of the parent parcel that's 12.85 acres. This is located on the southwest corner of Porsche Road and North Courtney Parkway in North Merritt Island. And then next you'll hear the associated rezoning item, which is L.
Okay, we have a lot of speakers for this. Ms. Kim Rosanka.
Good evening, Commissioner Smith, members of the County Commission. My name is Kim Rozenka. I'm with the law firm of Cantwell and Goldman in Cocoa Village. I'm here representing Crisafulli Enterprises, LLC. With me, I have Bud Crisafulli, the president of Crisafulli Enterprises, Steve Crisafulli, the vice president of Crisafulli Enterprises, and Joe Mayer of Busson Mayer, the engineer of record. I've given you 3 large sheets. It's best if you look at them this way, with the writing on the top, because that's north. This is an exciting new townhome project in North Merritt Island. It is located at Portia Road and North Courtney Parkway. It is proposed to be on 12.85 acres. This is a comp plan amendment on 1.385 acres of that parcel and the rezoning on the entire 12.85. As you can see from the first document, and it's also provided for the residents, for the neighbors to see over here on the board, it's proposed to be 48 units, 1,500 to 1,800 square feet each unit, 2-car garages, amenities, luxury living, backed up to a nature preserve, likely to sell in the high 300,000s to 400,000. The access is from Portia Road, as you can see, to the north of the proposal there, and from Courtney Parkway. There will be 2 access points. This will definitely hook up to sewer. It cannot be built unless it has sewer. The first page of the document I provided does show the diagram. It's abutting North Courtney Parkway. It has trees along North Courtney Parkway, a water area there for retention, and then it has the units as shown with the pool on the southwest corner. There's been a lot of questions as to why this is being developed as a townhome project. There are no townhome projects up there, as you probably all know. There is no demand for commercial development up this far north. There's not enough homes to support substantial commercial development up there unless we could get a Costco or Trader Joe's or something along those lines. This property has been commercial for over 50 years without being developed. There's no real choice of housing styles in this area. As you all are well aware of all of the development going on up at the Space Center, the Research Park, and there are a lot of workers coming in with high salaries that don't have places to buy homes in that area. So this will give many housing options to those coming into Brevard County. The first item before you is a small-scale amendment on the 1.385 acres. It's residential 4 to residential 2. It's just a tiny portion on the southwest corner. In your packet, there's many different copies of it, but on page 110, you can see where it shows just that little brown portion of 1.385 acres. And we talked with county staff about the best way to go about doing this, and they requested us to do residential 4 instead of trying to extend the neighborhood commercial to the west, which we could do under the comp plan that you have. There's some provisions for allowing extension of neighborhood commercial when it's along Courtney Parkway. The staff report for the small-scale amendment reports that the residential 4 is compatible with adjacent property. If you look at the second page of your document, it is a drawing, an outline of the existing comprehensive plan designations as they are currently. You'll see on the east side of North Courtney Parkway is residential 2, although some of the zonings over there, there's an RU 230 over in there. And then there's also Res 4 is almost everywhere to the west behind what is commercial. Most of along Courtney Parkway is commercial, although there's substantial residential development in the commercial land use designations. The small area study from 2005, which was referenced in your staff report, says we should be aware of that study. We are, however, that addresses commercial uses, that corridor study. It was for the corridor, the commercial corridor of North Courtney Parkway, and it deals with things such as outdoor storage areas, bay doors, construction materials, signs, native tropical vegetative landscape buffers, which we will use, and access management. As you're aware, the North Merritt Island Special District Board recommended denial unanimously, although the LPA unanimously recommended approval. I can do the rezoning if you want now, or if you want to take this and then I can do the rezoning portion, however you prefer.
Any questions for Ms. Rozenka? Okay, we have lots of cards.
Chairman, if you're going to consider the rezoning now, I'd like to read into the record what the proposal is, because there's some conditions in the BDP as well.
Because most of these people want to split, they've put K and L on their cards.
Exactly. Okay, so item L is the consideration of the zoning change from BU1 and AU to RA24. It's for the entire parent parcel of 12.85 acres, and it has an associated BDP limiting the proposal to a maximum of 48 units. It also provides for a conservation easement over the wetlands on the western portion of the property, and it limits the ingress and egress to 2 access points, one on Porsche Road and one on State Road 3.
Thank you. Would you like to address any of that?
I do, please. The rezoning is, I believe, the more troublesome for the residents is because they all want the large lots up in that area, and this is something new and different, and they're just struggling with that. This is the only way we could get townhomes is to go to RA24. The recommendations from North Mount Island Special District Board were again unanimously for denial. Planning and Zoning Board unanimously recommended for approval. We believe that the townhomes are a less intense use than the commercial uses that could be there in a BU1 zoning category. This rezoning would reduce potential trips from 2,855 to 279, and that's in your staff report. Some residents say they would prefer commercial space, specifically a retail use. The third document in your package that I gave you shows what commercial could look like on that parcel. It would have the same ingress and egresses from Porcher Road and from North Courtney Parkway, but it could be 69,200 square feet of retail space, literally a concrete jungle. And that is not the best use for that property. That would be a horrible use for that property. It would wind up with less aesthetically pleasing development there. And that is still using the exact same area where the townhomes would be and still leaving the wetlands and Oak Hammock to the west. So that could be a substantial, very large development of commercial space with 2,855 trips estimated per day. The staff report for the rezoning states that this rezoning is consistent with the community commercial, neighborhood commercial, and residential 4 zoning designations. The developer will be required to donate the right-of-way if the county allows access onto Porcher Road. So that's a given. They would donate the right-of-way to make the Porcher Road the right road size with the sidewalks. There are no school concurrency issues for this project, no road capacity issues for this project. The North Merritt Island Special District Board members did raise concern about the concern of backup traffic on Porcher Road. However, the small area study from 2005 on page 12 recommends that you have limited driveway cuts along North Courtney Parkway. So this does that by having the access on Porcher Road. Also, it's the best practices for 2 access points for every subdivision for emergency purposes. Also, that Porcher Road access is 250 feet from North Courtney Parkway. So there's quite a bit of distance there, so everyone can get out there. As I said, the North Merritt Island Special District Board recommended denial. Kim Smith of the North Merritt Island Homeowners Association spoke and cited her reasons. I would ask that you recognize that the North Merritt Island Special District Board is composed of many members of the North Merritt Island Homeowners Association. I've suggested many times that there is a conflict between those that sit on the North Merritt Island Homeowners Association and on the Special District Board, because the North Merritt Island Homeowners Association has a bylaw that says they shall endeavor to limit density to no more than 1 unit to the acre. And that's in your packet at page 112. North Merritt Island homeowners' concerns were generally stated by Ms. Smith, and they had no facts to support them. The first claim was that this rezoning is not consistent with the historical land use patterns. I suggest to you that it is. Just a quarter mile to the south is Sun Island Lakes, which was built in 1987, with portions of it at 4 units to the acre, which this would be. Sunset Lakes, about at 1.2 miles to the south, has some phases as 3.5 units to the acre. Claim number 2 was this is not consistent with actual development, when in fact, right next door, you have single-family homes in the commercial district. There's actually not been a lot of recent development within the past 3 years. Savannah Ridge, now Egress Landing, is residential too, and it's to the far side off of Paul Road, the east side. Claim number 3 was inconsistency with the character of the area. Again, there are single-family homes to the south and to the east. Claim number 5 was that this would have negative impacts to established residential neighborhoods. There will be no impacts. The only established residential neighborhood is Citrus Club to the south and west, where the nearest home is 300 feet through thick, dense woods. Claim number 5 is that the townhome development will aggravate drainage problems on surrounding properties. That won't happen. County code won't let it. They have to retain all their drainage, and they're going to also maintain the historical swale that's to the west of the property through the oak hammock. Claim number 6 is that it will cause significant adverse or unmitigable impact on wetlands. Again, the county code won't allow that except in very limited circumstances. So those were the concerns raised by North Merritt Island Special District Board without any facts to support. Engineering, Mr. Mayor can answer any questions you have. It's not been completed because there's been no zoning approval, so he doesn't know what he's designing. We will connect to county sewer system, as stated earlier. FDOT will dictate access points, but right now it's intended to coincide with the current median cut on North Courtney Parkway. In summary, we believe that this rezoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan, the land development code, and administrative policies. This is less intense than the concrete parking lot for retail, less impervious surfaces than this concrete jungle would have as well, and it would reduce significantly the number of potential trips. The potential trips, again, being 2,855, with the residential trips 279. With that, we would request approval of the comprehensive plan amendment and the rezoning.
Any questions for Ms. Rozenka? Nope. We're good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Or Mr. Mayor?
Or Mr. Mayor? Darlene Hunt. State your name and address, please.
Darlene Hunt, 125 West Crisafulli Road on Merritt Island. I support Mr. Crisafulli's efforts to develop the North Courtney Porcher Road acreage into a townhouse complex, and I'm opposed to the density of 48 units. There are two important features relating to the character of the area, and that is the roads and the environmental issues. State Road 3, or North Courtney Parkway, is a 50 mile per hour speed limit. That's on the front of the property. Porcher Road has, I don't know what the speed limit is there, to tell you the truth. Anyway, Porcher Road is a road that goes through an environmentally sensitive area. It's a wetland area, it's a slough. So I believe the frontage on the 50 mile per hour Courtney will cause a dangerous intersection. Porcher Road often experiences flooding. A few years ago, there was repaving up on North Merritt Island, and so that road was actually elevated in that particular area. This property is part of that slough. I mean, I heard Ms. Rozenka refer to it as a conservation area. It's not a conservation area yet. It's a wetland. It's a slough. I would recommend a zoning more like 12 units for that property. So therefore, I respectfully request that you deny Mr. Crisafulli's request for this high density change in the comp plan in the zoning because of traffic, environmental concerns, and too high of a density. I thank you.
John Shanson.
Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. I am John Shanson. I live at 7105 Briar Oak Drive on North Merritt Island. I've given you a packet. My concern here is with the runoff, basically. I've lived through a number of rain events out on North Merritt Island. My property itself has been high and dry, except for one event. One event where I had walking catfish on my property was Tropical Storm Faye. Pine Island Road was underwater for 10 days and unpassable. Porsche Road, was underwater as well for a while. We have drainage problems on North Merritt Island, and we exacerbate that by paving over Paradise. Just look at the drawing. See how much green space 48 units leave on that property. And they're going to retain the water? Not with a tropical storm like Faye, because it's going to run out on the road, and it's going to go wet in that wetlands, and then it's going to flow into the river. The beauty of North Merritt Island is it is a retention area. We have the mosquito impound area, and even they're trying to develop right up against that. I've given you some articles. Channel 9, our local ABC affiliate, in 2016 ran a program regarding the Vibrio, which is a bacteria that is naturally occurring. We are spending millions of government dollars, our dollars, to clean up the Indian River. But then we pave over Paradise, exacerbating what we're trying to clean up. In this article, it says that it is naturally found in the Indian River Lagoon. But now scientists from Florida Atlantic University's Harbor Branch Oceanographic Institute have discovered the bacteria living in Florida's lagoons and estuaries, cautioning that human development may be making the situation worse. And they go on to say that fishermen have had open wounds. As a matter of fact, many people die from this. And you'll find that information further on in the reading. But while the bacteria is naturally occurring, it is a concern that the excessive runoff into the lagoon is creating a better breeding ground for the Vibrio. Stormwater, which would normally be absorbed into the ground, is now flowing at a much greater rate into the lagoon. Paved areas provide a direct line of fresh water into the lagoon, upsetting the balance of the brackish water and giving the Vibrio more places to thrive. Look at that drawing, what 48 units does. There is no green space. It's either townhouse pads or paving or retention, and the retention is going to overflow. Thank you.
Chris Minerva. And Jane Purdue. He'll be next. So could you come down, Jane Purdue? Well, you're close enough. That's fine. I just want to kind of move things along. Chris?
Yes. Good evening, board members.
Your name and address,
yes,
please.
Good evening, board members, county commissioners, and members. I'm Chris Minerva, representing North Merritt Island Homeowners Association, P.O. Box 542372, Cocoa, Florida 32920. Okay. The Homeowners Association cannot support these requests because of conflicts within. Administrative policies number 3, incompatible with existing proposed land uses. Policy 3C, criteria is inconsistent with surrounding patterns of development, considering point 1, historical land use patterns, point 2, actual developments in the last 3 years. Administration policy 4, uncharacteristic with surrounding neighborhoods and areas. Policy 5, criteria E, changes in traffic as to exceed design functionality. Policy 7, immitigable impacts on significant natural wetlands. Policy 8.1, negatively impact the character of the land use surrounding property. 8.2, changing the land use and surrounding property. 8.3, negative impacts on available projected traffic patterns and the established character of the surrounding property. Under the factors to consider, the character of the land use of surrounding properties, the change in conditions of the land use of the property, impact on traffic, not compatible with existing and land use plans, and not appropriate based on these conditions. However, we did support the development along the lines of 1 house per acre, which would be 12 units. As Ms. Rosenka is correct in saying that we did. The homeowners association asks that the property be zoned appropriately and not require additional binding development plan restrictions. I have to also say that there is going to be a minimum of 48 cars living at that address. And if you look at the property, there is not one parking space for an additional car or a visitor or anyone. And there's no way to get to this location without a car or a motorcycle. We're 4 miles north of the bridge. So thank you very much for your consideration and the work you do.
Jane.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Jane Perdue at 545 Chase Hammock Road. I've lived there for 37 years. I'm approximately 400 feet east of this. My property is 400 feet east of this zoning request. And I don't want to be repetitious, but I support what Mrs. Hunt said. I think the density is too high for the area. Also, I'm concerned about the impact on the wetlands. And also, since I live almost across the street, I'm concerned about the traffic, because this is not your Porsche and Chase Hammock are not, those roads are not lined up with each other. Chase Hammock is approximately, I don't know, I'd say guess 50 feet north of Porsche. And I don't understand how we're going to safely get out of there with the Cape traffic in the mornings and the afternoons. Thank you.
Mr. Perdue. Mr. Perdue. You're next.
My hearing aids are at the VA being rebuilt.
I'll shout then.
Huh?
I said I'll shout.
My name is William Perdue, and I live at 545 Chase Hammock Road. I'm against this. It says 48 units on 12.85 acres. Half of that land is wetlands. So that means there's no way he can use almost half of that land to put a house on. So instead of 48 units on that, you're going to be up approximately 7 houses per acre. And if you let that go, any big attorney can come in here and say, you allowed that, we can put anything we want on North Merritt Island. And we're having enough rain problem out there right now. Last week, my property got almost 7 acres, excuse me, almost 7 inches of rain in 3 days. That almost put me underwater because the land out there is wet. Now, to give you an idea, 1 acre of land to 1 inch of rain is 20,000 gallons of water. Now that means last week I had 140,000 gallons of water on my property that I had a hard time getting rid of. And this week, Monday, the weather reports said that we were supposed to get 5 to 7 inches of rain that afternoon. If we'd have gotten 5 inches, that would have been another 100,000 gallons of water out there. And I don't know where you could put it. We've got big pumps the county has put in to get rid of rain. There's only one trouble. You can only get rid of so much rain out there, or you'll change the acidity of the salt water out there. Then you'll have all of the fishermen come in here and scream, which they did about 10 or 15 years ago when we were talking about putting all this, getting rid of all this water. And I don't know if my wife said something about the intersection. Chase Hammock Road dead ends in the State Road 3. And we have 2 miles of houses out there with almost a dozen houses that are on originally built to the old specifications, which means your slab of your house is on ground. You don't have to build it up to the new regulations, which is 12 inches above the crown of the road. Some of these people I have seen a 1/4 inch of water getting ready to go into a house on some of the land out there. So what we going to do if you don't slow up this selling property? Originally when I moved out there, you had to have 2.5 acres to buy it. You could not buy less than 2.5 acres. Now that's down to about 2 houses to an acre. Where are we going to stop? The county's got to figure out what to do with this water. We had a high wind west from the west, and it flooded all of the drainage ditches we had out there. There was no more place to put water, just from a high west wind. I don't know how else to put it, but we've got to do something. If you don't slow down the houses coming out there, you're going to start having to issue us boats to get out of there. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you. Jack Ratterman.
Good evening. My name is Jack Ratterman. I live at 568 East Hall Road, Merritt Island. I'm speaking on this issue because the 48 homes is really going to be put on 6 acres. And there are no townhomes out there, and that's because we really don't want the townhomes. We moved there because it's a rural community, and that's why we enjoy it. If we wanted 48 townhomes on 6 acres, we'd move down to Miami and get it down there, but we don't want that. So it's not compatible to the local community. The applicant was asked, were they going to have a gated community on all these high-dollar homes or ungated? I got 2 answers. One said yes, one said no. So the drawings and the plans they have here are not all confirmed as they indicate. The drawing up here can change tonight. All they're asking for is a zoning. They're not promising you what they're going to do here. So those promises can be changed. We all moved to Merritt Island, North Merritt Island, because it was a rural community, and we like that atmosphere, and that's what we would like to keep. When the applicant talked about the concrete jungle, we don't have a concrete jungle out there. It's almost like there was a threat. We're going to make it a concrete jungle if you don't give us the zoning. You know, there was also a reference to they're going to develop a Costco, a Publix, and a Target. You know, right now we're high dollar out there. We got a Dollar General, so that's all we need right now. We like to drive the 15 minutes into town. You know, that's why we're there. And the last thing is about the county code. They kept saying, we're going to follow the county code so there will be no flooding. Well, we're under county code now and we have flooding. The ditch on Hall Road has to be pumped out before a big hurricane event comes along. When Faye came in, the water backed up and the yards along Hall Road, and even with the county running the pump, we flooded. So their statements about they're going to not have flooding, they can't say that. Thank you.
Mike Hikaka? Alrighty then. And next up would be Chris Cook. Chris, if you could make your way down to the front here, save us some time. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mike Hercala, and I live at 4618 Woodstock Drive in Merritt Island, and that is the mobile home park up there. It's Island Lakes. And I've been before this board before about densities, and I'm going to keep talking about densities until somebody gets their head up there. It's out of where they think it is. Densities will kill you in the future. There's no doubt about that. It happens. That's how the tenements and cities are created, by high densities. What all these people have said about the fact of putting more and more houses in there that the ground can carry, than the area should be able to carry. You not only have a water problem up there, you already have a traffic problem. Coming down there this morning, I was backed up, what, 2 lights, 3 lights coming past the bridge. I've said in the past to the board that was previous to this one, when that whole road project went in, you're going to tell us that we're going to have to go to Titusville to do our shopping. I don't believe what is said about the State Road 3 amount of cars that's there now. I mean, it's building. The last year and a half, it's been building. There's a lot more cars coming through there now. And eventually what's going to happen, the only place you have to get off of North Merritt Island is to go north or south. South is the bridge. And you have the 2 main drags, north and south, and one is you can't get across that canal. The other one, you have to use the bridge. And the bridge gets blacked up sometime. You go up there and see when it's down. See how far back the cars are in both the north and south of that barge canal. You can't do more than what these people are wanting to do with that property. You can't. And it only makes sense, and I think Jim will agree with me there too. It only makes sense to do what is necessary up there. The people talk about the water level. Behind my place, they put that development in there. They put 4.5 feet of fill. Why the hell do they have to put 4.5 feet of fill someplace to build a house? And the drainage, okay, the engineer said, well, the drainage is fine, it's going northeast. Fine, but how many trees do they take out that's not going to eat that water? The water's going to go where? There's no percolation up there now. So you're going to put more water into man-made drainage that can't take it to begin with. It just doesn't make sense. The water level below the surface is not that far away. You could probably put a point in there. You could probably put a pipe with a point where you used to bang them into to create a well. That's how close that is. So the pumps are going when they need them, and how much more can they take? And besides which, they're pumping them to the level of the canal or the East River, the Indian River canal area, and that's how far. That we don't have any control over that. It's there. It's there. So you can't pump when it can't take it anymore. So in my view, increasing densities is something that should be disallowed in North Merritt Island. People want to build in there, fine, build in there, but with common sense. Thank you.
Mr. Cook?
Hey, how you
and
doing?
My next speaker will be Mary Safar.
Good evening. My name is Chris Cook. I live at 1520 Pine Island Road, Merritt Island, 32953. I'm here to speak against the 48 units. I'd like to address some of the things that the representative for the applicant stated. She said there was no demand up there for commercial properties. That's probably because there hasn't been sewer up there either. Now that the sewer's coming up, there should be some demand for commercial because they can develop that same piece of property. She also said there's no place for all the people that are moving up there. I counted at least 6 half-completed developments up there. There's plenty of houses for people to buy up there in every price range. And if you'd like to come down, I'll show them to you. And she is correct. There is no townhomes, and there's probably a reason for that because no one wants to buy them, and it's a high density, and it's a rural area. No one wants to build high density in a rural area. So that's probably the reason there's not any townhomes there. She kind of dismissed the corridor study. That's a commercial corridor. That was the whole plan, long-range planning. We've been working on that since 2005, working with the county staff, trying to get it done. It's been taking forever, but it's a commercial corridor. All the residents that are on there are either grandfathered in. If you see there, if they're close to State Road 3, it's because State Road 3 had moved closer to the houses, and they were there since the late 60s. All the other residences there and developments are pushed back from the corridor. You can't see them. It's just not the right place for a high residency development. More like 12 units would probably be a much more reasonable proposal. As you heard, we have plenty of drainage issues up there. Plenty of it. We've heard several times that it's all going to get taken care of with these new developments, and they never do. I'm sure this one will, though. I'm positive. It's a barrier island. It's a barrier island with only two drawbridges to get to it. We have to evacuate anytime there's a hurricane, and the drawbridges go up. They have to be maintained. They break down, and there's a term we have in North Merritt Island called "we're bridge," and it's a convenient excuse to be 20 minutes late to any appointment. And with more people on there, it's going to get even more. And as far as the North Merritt Island homeowners go, I'm a proud member. There's over 450 dues-paying members of that homeowners association, and also a member of the North Brevard Special Advisory Board, which the county created because it is such a special and unique area in North Merritt Island in the county. And yes, we happen to be members of both because we care about our community. We care about our area. That's why we're here. We don't get paid. And it's our opinion. We don't get paid to have that opinion. And I'm not going to apologize for it to anybody. Like I said, we know it's going to get developed. We just think it should be done responsibly. If you allow 48 homes there, there's going to be 48. There's going to be 52. There's going to be 100 down the road, and we think the whole purpose of zoning and planning is to prevent problems before they occur. Now, you have the opportunity to do that here. Now, I sit on the zoning board, too, and I know that it's difficult to make decisions sometimes. I don't think this one is that difficult. Thank you very much.
Mary Hilberg, you're next.
Good evening, Commissioners. Mary Spar, 825 Clifton's Cove, Colco. So I'm one of the people who actually doesn't live in Merritt Island, although I did live there for over 30 years. So I'm kind of looking at it from a little bit of the outside, and I have some concerns. The first one should be very easy to correct. The applicant said that there would be sewer out there. I would just like them to note in the BDP that no development will occur until sewer hookup, is really going to happen. My second concern is with the wetlands. Your agenda item says the subject site is vacant and is primarily comprised of wetlands. Is primarily comprised of wetlands, but no map from the applicant. This really disturbs me because I've studied the residential wetlands policy since 1995, and I have no clue how they could possibly put 48 units in with this residential wetlands policy, and I really think that they should have to show some sort of a wetlands map. It just boggles my mind. And the third concern is the floodplain. Your agenda item says that there's mapped floodplain there, but once again, no map. We don't know where the floodplain is, and the site, part of it may have to be elevated, so we don't feel, people may not feel confident that the development won't affect the neighboring properties. But in the BDP, a requirement should be stated that they're going to provide compensatory storage for any floodplain impacts. Really need that. And fourth is the compatibility. I agree with the residents. 48 units is just not compatible, and their solution of 12 is just much, much preferable. Thank you.
Mary. And Earl McMillan, you'll be next.
Hi, Mary Hilberg, 3780 Sierra Drive in Merritt Island. I have show and tell for you. So, such a nice group you have here. The first one is your packet has your pictures are in different order, but I'd like to start with this one. This one is first. This is from the packet that of the applicant, and as you see the outline of it, see this outline right here of this little piece on this side. This is the part that is in the comp plan. This is the part that is the comp plan request. The larger part is not. That's the rezoning. But this little narrow here, this rectangle, is in this comp plan. And I would like you to note this ribbon of green. See this deep ribbon of green here? Well, it's not there for no reason. And I'll show you why it's there. Get my notes off. Because most of this board, matter of fact, all of this board is new, so that you weren't here when the county did this huge study, and it was magnificent. John Denninghoff remembers. He was there. The natural resources were there. They put together this enormous study after Fay, and the study was done in 2009. It's like 8 years ago. Nothing's happened since then, dramatically in the way of changing the topography. And it's the topography of the area that is causing these enormous situations that everyone's alluding to, the flooding and the this and the stormwater and where will the water go. It's the topography that makes the difference. So this is the study, and I just put the front page up just to show you that. In this study, what they did was they took some of the most dramatic areas of flooding, and they did an aerial right along Chase Hammock. The title of this is Chase Hammock. So here's the aerial right along it, and then underneath here, an exact lineup with the aerial shows the topography of this road. And one of the problems in North Merritt Island is the bowl effect. And as wonderful as, Floodplain Frank is, and John is, and all of the staff has just been simply wonderful, and the pumps are fabulous, the water goes round and round and round and round. That's all it does. It can't go anywhere. When it rains a lot, the lagoon is full, the ground is saturated, and the water goes round and round, until finally the water starts to go in, eventually absorb, or the lagoon goes down and then the water can get out. But otherwise, that's all it does. So, and they do a wonderful job with the pumps. They pump it and pump it and pump it, and everybody's happy to see it moving. But that's all it does. So this bowl effect is one of the reasons, and that we can't really do anything about this bowl effect. But I'd like to draw your attention to, I'm trying to get this thing to go. I'd like to draw your attention to, on this map, this is on Chase Hammock, so the line is Chase Hammock. You see right down here, just step down a little bit, and you see that this square right here is the square. See where my light is? That's the square of the property that we're looking at. Boy, your hands look bad in this light, don't they? So, if you take a line here, take a piece of paper, and you want to line it up with this bottom part. So you take the piece of paper and you start it here. Here's on the edge, and I've made the words for you larger on the...
Mary, you have 30 seconds.
Oh, God, I have to hurry. I made the words for you larger here: Courtney, Tropical Trail, Lagoon, and KSC boundary, okay? So let me show you where this piece is that's going to come in here. He wants to, it's right next to that square. He wants this part here, or the applicant wants, the request is for, this part here to be rezoned for. Look where it is on the bottom. Look how low it goes. It's about the same height as the lagoon. Therein lies the problem.
Mary, time is up.
May I request another 10 seconds?
No, ma'am.
Thank you for... Respectfully request that you deny this application.
Thank you for your input. Earl McMillan.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. That's it. You got it. Yeah, you've heard about this before, and I appreciate your patience, but since some of you are not as familiar with North Merritt Island as Commissioner Barfield, I made my little sketch. My name's Earl McMillan. I live at 150 Smith Road. And the numbers I put on my little sketch, the 1, 2, 3, 4 through 10, I'll just remark very quickly on what they indicate. Number 1 is southbound traffic has a left turn lane to the Shell Station and Smith Road, but no arrow. So it's Russian roulette when you try and make a left turn there. Number 2 is U-turning. For some reason, people southbound get into the left turn lane and make U-turns around the median. People get into the left turn lane going north, where there is an arrow, but make U-turns around the median. Number 3, people make U-turns over the median. The U-turn for getting into Marine Harbor, which is a condominium, which is for northbound traffic, southbound traffic has discovered that that's available for U-turns. So you have southbound traffic making illegal U-turns there. The traffic coming out of Marine Harbor, which is new condominiums, go across 3 lanes of southbound traffic to get into the left turn lane, to line up, to go under the beach line and gain access to the beach line. Also, to get to Sea Ray Road, they make U-turns over the median. That's number 6. Number 7, they make U-turns around the median. Number 8, they go under the beach line and make U-turns around the median. And I'm not just talking Volkswagens, I'm talking 18-wheelers. So I know that the young lady said the traffic saturation on North Courtney is only 35%, but I'm focusing on what the crazy people are doing out there. Every time I go out on the Courtney, I see something different being done. There's a cut. Number 7 is, I said that, 8. Oh, number 9 is, for some reason, and I haven't lived on North Merritt Island long enough, maybe somebody out there knows why, there's a cut in the curb. There must have been something there a long time ago. But now what it's used for are people going in and out to that vacant property to go down to the barge canal. I guess to go fishing, I'm not sure. Traffic entering, and my wife fusses at me for doing this, traffic northbound going into the Shell Station, although there's a right turn lane north of Smith Road, 99% make a right turn onto Smith Road and then immediate left into the Shell Station. But the 500-pound elephant in the room is that eventually the beach line is going to be 6 lanes. I don't know how that's going to work. But I know the county didn't make this problem, and the state made this problem, but we have to live with this problem, and I ask you to recognize this problem when you're talking about enhanced densities north of the barge canal. Thank you.
Thank you. Carol Hamilton. Okay. Joe Mayer. Okay. Bud Crisafulli. Any questions from the board?
Is that our last card?
That was our last card.
Yes. I'd like to get Mr. Mayor to answer any of these things about the engineering side of it, especially the stormwater and runoff and all traffic implications and all that.
My name's Joe Mayer. I'm with Bus Mayer Engineering Group at 100 Parnell Street in Merritt Island, and I would be the engineer of record for the project if it proceeds. I concur with the speakers that certainly everyone is in agreement that there's drainage issues in North Merritt Island. Where I disagree is that new development is causing or exacerbating those drainage problems. All new development is required to have stormwater take care of their stormwater treatment on their property. We certainly intend to do that with the pond, the lake system that you see here. We have to retain a 25-year, 24-hour storm per both your standards and the St. Johns River Water Management District standards. We have to allow no more water to discharge from our site in the post-development condition than discharges in the pre-development condition. And I would suggest to you that these stormwater ponds, when you go out and look at them, they hold the water back from the peak of the storm. They do solve the problem for new development. New development is not the problem because these stormwater ponds take care of and attenuate the water and treat the water on our property before we discharge. I also concur with the speaker that talked about this wetland corridor, this wetland slough through here being extremely important to the drainage in North Merritt Island. The low point that she was talking about is actually right about here. The edge of the clearing is basically at the edge of our development, give or take a few feet. We're not going to be impacting this wetland slough in any way. In fact, your code will only allow us to impact 1.8% maximum of our total area, which is 12.85 acres. That's something on the order of 0.06 of an acre maximum wetlands impacts we do. I'm not saying we're even going to do that, but that's the maximum we could do, or we're not going to get site plan approval and permit approvals through your staff. So this slough will remain intact. It will remain as a buffer to these properties over here, but we will not impact the drainage that's occurring through here. And in fact, we will be attenuating and holding back our water in the ponds, keeping it off the peak of the rest of the storm, if you will. The ditches are filling up from all the rain that's happening. Our pond is filling up, and then the water that is released after the peak of the ditches. So we're not increasing the peak stages. New development in general does not increase the peak stages during storm events in these ditches. The problem is, as they indicated, the bowl effect that's in Merritt Island. So,
is that a regulatory requirement?
Yes.
Okay.
Traffic-wise, did you want me to address traffic? From my perspective, and in my opinion as an engineer, the Space Center is once again growing and is a very vibrant. If you go up there, you see a lot of development going on. As the force main and the sewer is available down this corridor, folks, office building builders, commercial builders, etc., are going to look up and down this corridor for development. And as Mr. Rodzanka said, we showed you a layout. With relative ease, we came up with 69,000 square feet of commercial area that could be built on here. That is way more intense. Under the existing zoning category, that's what could be done without coming before this board. Somebody can come along and do that. It'll be a big, huge parking lot and a big, huge building. If we go to, you could go two-story, etc., and we could actually get more than we showed on that layout, in my opinion, depending on what the proposed use is. This is from an engineering perspective, this is actually a downzoning. I realize the density that we're asking for is 4 units to the acre, but from an actual use perspective, this is far less than what could occur under a commercial development scenario. And the trip generation information is accurate based on the ITE trip generation manual, roughly 2,800 trips per day for commercial use could happen on here. What we're proposing is about 10% of that.
I know the issue came up on parking too. Can you address that?
Well, it hasn't been decided whether there'll be at least a one-car garage, if not a two-car garage. That hasn't been determined yet, but one of the two. In front of that will be either a one-car driveway or a two-car driveway. So either 2 or 4 spaces per unit minimum, and then we do have some parking down by the amenities here. And then there will be some room for visitors, etc. I don't show on the layout at this point any parking areas because we don't really want to. We'd rather see that be green space. And in normal subdivisions and things like that, this is not an issue. If you have a couple folks over, etc., they park in or near your driveway, and it's not a problem. It'll look like any other residential street when somebody's having guests over.
I'd also like to ask Mr. Denninghoff to address what's, since Fay, everything that's happened as far as what we're doing in North Merritt Island for drainage.
Since Tropical Storm Fay occurred, we've, in the intervening period of time, which is Tropical Storm Fay, I think was August of 2008, August 19th of 2008, we have completed a great many of the plans that had been placed into our sort of queue as to what we were going to try to implement on North Merritt Island. Amongst those are a refurbishment of the mosquito control pump that is on the south side of Hall Road, East Hall Road, and we've also completed the installation of 3 permanent pumps at the Pine Island Conservation Area. And those systems, and the installation of various weir structures and water control, flow control structures, which allow us to divert water into the impoundments at Pine Island or pump water into the mosquito control impoundment that's south of Hall Road. We've also installed a couple of drainage pipes in other locations which have allowed for water to drain. Particular interest on this one is that we do have a pipe that's under West Hall Road, which helps drain that slough area that's between Tropical Trail and North Courtney that previously was not there. And it's proven to help quite a bit during a number of storm events. In addition to all of that, we've also installed various water level gauges and rain gauges, and we monitor all of those to allow us to manage the water flow and operate the pumps efficiently, not just every time it rains, but in a way that minimizes the wear and tear on the pump and the cost of the pump, while also maximizing our probability of successfully managing the water, keeping homes from flooding. By the way, we do only manage to try to keep homes from flooding. We don't worry so much about yards or the ditches and how deep they are, or even the roads for that matter, although we don't like wet roads either, but the homes is our real goal. There are still some plans which need to be implemented. We have an objective to install a second pump at the mosquito control site, and and we have moved a second portable pump that is available and is staged nearby for us to be able to mobilize those to either of two major locations that help to facilitate pumping. Most of that benefit is on the east side of Courtney, but it does help to some degree with the portion that's west of Courtney and east of Tropical Trail. That area is still a very stressed location. So while we've helped a lot, we have not solved all of the problems up there, and we're still looking to help more.
Anyone else? Yes. Commissioner Zanardi?
I guess my one question would be is, I mean, you know, I know our county code is pretty strict when it comes to wetlands, impact on wetlands. In fact, we've had that discussion before about, you know, because most often our developers and anybody that wants to do anything in the county complains about that. So I'm not going to ask you questions in regards to wetland impacts, but as far as drainage and stormwater runoff, I mean, is staff concerned at all about this having a negative impact, or are they managing their water? Is a development like this going to manage their water okay? I'm not going to ask you whether or not a commercial is more impactful than a residential, because it's obvious that it is. I know that it's obvious probably to everybody in the room, but as far as the project itself, I mean, do you see it as having a negative impact on stormwater?
You know, those are site plan details that we just haven't seen any calculations for yet. I don't think they have, you know, a full evaluation of what exactly they're going to do and how much they'll have to attenuate. I mean, but they will, like
but if
Mr. Mayor
saw a negative impact, or staff perceived there to be a negative impact, number one, it probably wouldn't move forward, or you would tell us we believe this to have a negative impact.
It would be held up at site plan approval for sure.
Okay.
And also, just to clarify, the comment about there primarily being wetlands on the property, that's just on the piece that is proposed for the comp plan change, not on the entire parcel. The entire parcel is not primarily wetlands.
Right. And I guess my only other comment would be, you know, and I listened to everybody and everybody's comments, and I appreciate everybody that took the time to come, but we have, and I'd hate to generalize it, but I don't want to point anybody out specifically because I don't think that's appropriate, but you have your commenters that don't want any development. You have your commenters that are okay with development as long as it's commercial. And then you have your people who comment that want perhaps less density, which, you know, may be the most rational, but, you know, in all reality, you know, the way it is zoned now, it could be more impactful and it could cause more of a water problem for that area. And if it was a planned unit development, you know, it would be 5 units per acre. And at 4 units per acre, it's pretty much a neighborhood. I know most acreage lots in most neighborhoods are built on quarter acre. So, you know, the site plan's still going to come and those decisions will be made accordingly, but I'm not going to say no because somebody wants a shopping center as opposed to a residential development. So I would be in support of this because, again, if there's problems later on, we'll address them or we'll deny if the site's not appropriate.
Commissioner Pritchett, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir. I was able to ask Aaron a lot of questions early on also, and a couple of things that I had questions I was concerned about. I asked you if there would be wetland mitigation, and you said no, that this isn't really going to be affecting where he's building, which was important. It's actually coming with a stormwater situation that made me kind of comfortable. And, you know, as far as living in that area, I would rather have residential. I don't think it's that dense as compared to what would be happening with the commercial. So I'm probably going to support this tonight, too. I'm going to wait to hear what District 2 Commissioner has to say, but I think it looks like a pretty good safe fit for this area right here in Merritt Island.
Commissioner Barfield, you have the floor.
Well, first, I want to thank everybody for being here. You know, one thing is about Merritt Island, we can count on people showing up when there's something important, and I appreciate that. It says a lot for our community. With that said, we as a board have to stick to what the law is. This is a quasi-judicial board. And so what that means is we have to make decisions that are based on specific criteria. And that criteria is very clear. And we have to look at, number one, is it consistent with the area? But when you look at the map, you look and you'll see that you have residential 2, residential 4, all around this. And that means, by law, it is consistent. The other side of it is this. We just now approved on 4G from a planned industrial area to a agricultural residential, and that was just down the road. And that was at the Diabora and right on Courtney, right down the street. So yeah, it is, but it's still in the same corridor. The other thing is, looking at traffic, does it impact traffic? The numbers don't support that it does. I understand that we have Courtney, and that's FDOT road, and trust me, I know, and that U-turn is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. It's really interesting when you see an 18-wheeler try to make that U-turn. And I think it's also kind of ironic they had to put additional pavement there so they could get around it because they were tearing up the road, or the right-of-way. But with that said, again, sticking by what the law says, traffic is actually reduced from 2855 trips per day by the commercial down to 175 trips. So that's not the issue. Okay, well, stormwater, we have to be compliant with the regulations. And what was said here also was that in the site plan, you have to meet that. In fact, other areas that have happened, they can come in and say they're going to have all of these different, a certain amount of homes there, but reality is when you get to the site plan, they can't because they have to design and make sure that they have everything else in place as required within the site planning process. So I definitely I understand what y'all are saying, but we are bound right now to stick with what the law says. And with that said, I'm going to go ahead and make the motion. So, no,
quiet, please.
No, sir.
You don't have the floor. Sir, you don't have the floor.
So I will go ahead and make the motion. How do I need to do this? With K first?
Yes, we need to do K first.
You guys realize it's pump?
Just,
sir,
water out of that?
sir, you don't have the floor.
There's only a pump that pumps that whole area.
Sir, I'm not going to tell you again, please. Thank you.
So my motion is that we approve the small-scale comprehensive plan amendment for residential 2 to residential 4, and that's my motion.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I want to disclose at this time that I met with Mr. Steve Crisafulli on the 31st in my office.
I also did with Mr. Crisafulli, both Mr. Crisafulli and Ms. Rosanka.
I met with Mr. Crisafulli, but all he mentioned, he was head of a development company. I didn't even know what it was or anything, so I figured that this is it.
And I have not. Just so I don't want to be silent and say that I've met with somebody, wonder if I have or not. I have not met with anybody, applicant or otherwise.
And I have not met with any Russians. Just saying.
You're in D.C. So that's my
Okay,
motion.
we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Nay.
Okay, L.
Okay, I make a motion changing the zoning classification, BU-1 and AU to RA-2-4.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a
Commissioners?
second.
You may need to incorporate the BDP into
Okay.
the motion.
All right, I'll amend that to put the BDP in that also.
Second holds.
Okay, the BDP has been added and included in the second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. And thank you, folks, for all of you for coming. Your input was good to hear.
Thank you,
We're going to
Chairman.
take a 5-minute break. Make it 10 minutes. You're walking pretty good.
Yeah, I'm excited.
I am too, because that could be my toe in a few months.
You can actually stand up on tiptoes just like that.
Wow.
Never could do that.
No. When I did walk a mile in her shoes and I had to wear high heels, I couldn't do it.
You gotta walk in high heels.
For a mile. Walk a mile in her shoes.
We need to talk about this.
Okay, I guess we're running.
That might be
Okay, it's time to move forward. We'll resume with 4M.
Chairman, the next item on the agenda is item 4M. It's a change of zoning classification request to go from TR1 to TR1A. The subject parcel is on 3.61 acres, and it has a proposed BDP to limit the density to 4 units per acre, and that would allow for the development of 14 single-family lots.
I have 2 cards from the applicants, Tim Sanders and Chris Hazel. Would you like to speak, or do you just want to have questions asked?
I'll speak for a second.
Okay, you're welcome to.
I'm Tim Sanders of 763 Silver Cloud Circle, Lake Mary, Florida. And I just want to address there was a concern, I was going over the agenda, and there was a concern in regards to the wetlands, possibility of wetlands on that property. And once I found that out, I reached out to a recommended environmental specialist and had a review or determination done, and it was determined that and I'll just read it here, completed determination, the entire site consists of uplands, and that no wetlands are present in that area on the site. So just wanted to address that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Those are the only cards we have. Pleasure of the board.
I move to approve the rezoning classification.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second.
You want to put the BDP in that too?
Yes, it's hiding in there with the approved BDP.
Yeah, we need the BDP in there. Okay, the BDP is added, and it's added to the second.
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Okay, item 4N is a request for a change of zoning classification from AU to RR1. This is a proposal by Pamela Childers on 2.53 acres in the Mims area on the north side of Maybert Road, east of US 1. The western portion of the property is 0.91 acres, and the eastern side is 1.62 acres.
We have lots of cards. John Lucier. I was going to let you go last, so you could reply. John Lucier and John Savetsky would be next, so if you could move down to the front here. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm John Lucier. I live 4692 Tawny Lane. The property right behind the one requesting the zoning, and I'm just here to tell you that I disapprove of the rezoning change because I'd like to keep it like it is in the area, rural. Same thing you've heard all night long. That's my first question. Y'all do y'all disapprove anything?
Actually, we do.
I came to one of these several years ago, and it was the same way. So everybody says you got to come, you're going to get anything done, but it doesn't seem to be that way.
Well, sir, as Mr. Barfield so eloquently said before,
I know
we
you
have
got
to
to
follow the law, and so people normally don't come here unless they already know that they're following the law. And so when there's a question, then that's where we come in.
I understand. About 12 years ago, approximately, I bought that property, and I split it up. I came to the county and asked what I could do with it, and I was told that, that 2.5 acres is what they wanted. That's what they wanted. In 2009, I think there was some kind of change, and that whole area was supposed to stay that way. We have a few places on there that's been changed. One, 2 doors down from me that I didn't even know got changed. I didn't get notified of that, and I'm not sure why. I didn't even know it was changed to R1 until I started investigating this. So, with that being said, I just want to say that I disapprove. I have no problem with the building one house there, but not 2.
Duly noted.
Thank you.
John Savetsky.
Yes, my name is John Savetsky, and I reside at 3530 Maybert Road. And before I go on, I'd like to say that what Mr. Lucio was referring to, I did not get a notice on that change either. And I was right next to that property that got the rezoned. But anyway, what I'd like to discuss or talk about today is the concern that I have with the road. It's a dirt road. It's 30 feet wide. My property has a wetland on one corner, probably about 180 feet from the drainage ditch. And what had happened about 3 days ago, we had 6 inches of water. That ditch overflowed, and it remained so. And not only did we have the wetland just build up, but I had probably 3/4 of an acre totally underwater for 24 hours. Now that happens more than once. It happened on occasion after 2 or 3 inches of water, and we get that quite often in here, as you know. So my concern would be that the impact of houses on 1 acre lots, if we approve this, then how many other people would want to do that in our neighborhood, and what effect that would have on the drainage problems that we already have in the area. There are already rumblings that I've heard of other people wanting to request that same thing. And to me, it seems like if you're going to make a change, then why not just change it for everybody? And why have everybody go right through this? Why don't you just change the whole area to that zoning? Not that I would be in favor of it, obviously. But that would be my concern at this point, that I don't think that it could handle it. I don't think the problems with the road that we have right now, I mean, the maintenance on that road, I don't know what would happen if we continue to develop the way 1 acre lots would do it. So I guess that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. John Balke and Chad Easley would be next.
I wanted him to go first. He's got all the good arguments. My name is John Belke. I live at 3495 Maybert Road. I'm across the street and up one from the property in question. A little more than 20 years ago, I came to ask for a waiver, and I got it because I was going from a 15-foot setback to a 10-foot setback. At that time, the impact was 0. And, sir, I take great exception to what you're saying about following the law. You're not following the law. You're following the wishes of people like the Christopherles with money and people that want to build and add and add. You're not following. Don't shake your head. I'm an attorney. I follow the law. I follow the law, and if the law impacts people, then it is incorrect. What you're doing is incorrect. I listened to that whole thing with the Christopherles, and the people there are getting flooded. They're having all these water problems, and you just allowed 48 luxury homes at 1,800 square feet. That isn't a luxury home. That's going to be low income, and you know it. And they're going to have how many people going up and down that street? You're going to have all that.
Sir, which subject are you talking about?
I'm talking about changing the zones. Why do people go to a place where it's zoned at AU and they come along and say, well, I don't like that. Let's change it to something different. I have across the street from here, we have a wildlife sanctuary. And in that, we had to have a minimum of 5 acres. I didn't come for and ask for a waiver. I complied with the law because the impact would have impacted someone else. This is going to impact people. You're asking for things that are going to impact people. You follow the law. What we have in that wildlife sanctuary, we have 2 Siberian tigers, we have 1 Bengal tiger, we have a full-grown lion, and we have a white wolf right across the street. But we follow the law. We have the permits. Florida Wildlife come out frequently and inspect us. We follow the law. The law says this is AU. I'd like it to leave it at AU. And again, oh, by the way, John didn't get notice. The other John didn't get notice. I'm also John. I didn't get notice for either one of these either. So your system isn't working. The people that are supposed to be noticed for these hearings aren't getting noticed. You need to fix that.
You're talking about the one 2 years ago that he was talking about?
Yeah, right across the street from me. It changed from the 2.5 acre down to 1 acre, and this one too. I never got notice for this hearing until my neighbor said, did you know? So your system isn't working, we're not getting noticed. I ask that you waive this primarily because you didn't give proper notice. Isn't that what the law says? Please deny this. Thank you.
You want to speak now? Chad Easley and Jared Kemp would be next.
Oh, okay. As far as the notice of the change that took place, I believe it was back in 2008 or 2009 for Courtney Winstead that happened there on Maybert Road. No, there was no notice. I own 2 pieces of property adjacent to that as well. We didn't get notice for that either. We were actually told that that went under a in-house change where it's less than 10%, which is inaccurate. Just to clear up what he was saying. Future land use maps. Future land use maps, generalized maps, they derived years and years ago. Generic platform, overridden by zoning, many deciding factors. That's written in every Brevard County study. Because something meets a future land use map doesn't make that the best decision. Small area study performed in 2007 put together a prospective map of 2.5 acre lots north of Grant Line Road, limited to an agricultural use area to limit density. Less than 15% of the people in the area where this you're asking for are not actively involved in some ag use on their property. And that will entail everything from cows, horses, exotic animals, tigers, deer, citrus, hay, etc. Zoning maps, zoning planning guidelines, and guidelines and regulation for growth based on study performed. If we don't agree with it, then why do we even have them? If it's easy just to come in and say, I don't like that, then why is it done? Why do we dedicate the time and the effort and the meetings and everything else to put it on? So again, if none of it is going to stand, why is it there? Problems with rezoning that, water quality diminishing study performed by you guys, by private individuals, also shows sulfur content gaining on an average of 80 parts per million per year. Just in that area there. Large amounts of money were directed from Brevard County for conservation lands due to saving the aquifer. That was the Roberts ordeal, and that was the whole deal. It was then outlined that we would be limiting growth and everything and concentrating more on agricultural use for all surrounding land. The drainage area, you guys have heard that till you're blue in the face, but we have a bad problem with it there. One thing about it is there's a wetland area directly behind that piece that they're wanting to rezone that is stated wetland. Everything drains from the north to the south and then to the east, and it does come through there. There's a county listed right-of-ways, which brings about another facet of this rezoning, is they're wanting to abandon the right-of-way, which is a direct drain for that wetland area and for several other adjoining properties. The right-of-way, Maybert Road is a 30-foot right-of-way, and that encompasses a drainage ditch. Right now, they are currently encroaching property on private property owners up to 10 to 12 feet to accommodate the current traffic. Traffic and maintenance costs it cannot sustain. To wrap it up, you're opening the door for more development. A man just bought 60 acres right across from me. He's waiting to see what you guys do here, because when you allow it to be rezoned, that's what he's going after. They're pushing out agriculture. People like me, I raise white-tailed deer and exotics. We've got horses, dogs, and various other things. We don't have a place if you guys push us out. We bought this. We live up here. We live out in the boonies because that's what we want. That's our lifestyle. And then you got people that want to come in and say, oh, this is kind of cool. I'd love to live out here, but I don't use agriculture, but I think that you guys should modify your lifestyle because we want to live by you. Right-of-way can't accommodate it. Developers, like I said, you have to give them the same as you give everybody else. Drainage is a huge problem. The principles of why people seek to live there. Property values will be infringed, and be very cautious as leaders in this community to not allow the requests of a few to outweigh the needs of the many. Thank you.
Hello.
Jack Ratterman next. Jared Kemp.
Yes, sir. Jared Kemp, 3654 Maybert Road. My wife and I recently purchased about 6 acres on Maybert to the west of Ms. Trowder's property. We plan to build our home there. We strongly object to this rezoning effort. Maybert Road is not a paved road, and we believe the additional vehicular traffic created by smaller parcels will have a negative impact on the quality of the road and the quality of life in the area. If this reclassification is allowed, it could lead to a pattern of rezonings in the area. The property immediately adjacent to ours is currently pending sale. We don't want to see 6 houses from our front porch. If the right-of-way is vacated, they will own 2.53 acres of land with AU zoning. We wouldn't take exception to a single parcel of land in a single home. We do take exception to rezoning to RR1 and creating 2 equal lots with a different zoning classification. My wife and I are moving to this area in North Brevard to start a family and get away from the densely populated housing communities that are typically found within city limits. We sincerely hope the board will deny this request to have her property zoning reclassified. Thank you for this opportunity.
Jack Ratterman.
To speak on P.
That's this, 4P. Oh, okay. You're right, you're next. Sorry. Okay, now we have Marcy Spare.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Marcy Spur, and I reside at 839 Crestwood Avenue in Titusville, Florida, for the next 16 days until the sale of my house goes through. Good evening. We are here to request a rezoning for a parcel of land on Maybert Road in Mims. The rezoning to RR1 is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the future land use for this area. It's also consistent with zoning in the immediate area. There are 5 properties zoned RR1 on Maybert Road. 4 of them have homes on them. If you look at the radius map that we provided for you tonight, you'll see all of the RR1 in the 1-mile area of our parcel of land. There are 63. What the map doesn't show, unfortunately, is all of the parcels of land that are currently zoned SR, which requires half-acre parcels or smaller to build homes. And in fact, the home just on the south corner of Maybert Road in US 1 is zoned SR. These residents drive by 3, 4, 5 homes that are already zoned RR1, and those homes have been there since the late 80s. We're respectfully requesting this rezoning petition as a matter of policy. Some people say, why would you want to move to a neighborhood when nobody wants you there? But we're still planning to be good stewards of this land and to be good neighbors. In terms of water, the parcel of land that we own is 20 feet above sea level. We checked out the state of Florida emergency water management studies and their topographical maps. The land is 20 feet above sea level. The land at the end of Maybert, where it meets Dixie Way, is 10 feet above sea level. The zoning request cannot change that, just like no one can change how water runs downhill by denying my request. There is a deep ditch on the southerly border of our parcel, and we are currently in dialogue with Road and Bridge to find a way that we can contribute to a solution for this issue. We did today sign an easement deed, giving the county 15 feet of our land to help with this. Like I said earlier, the first 3 houses on the southern side of Maybert are zoned RR1 and SR. They're all approximately 1.25 acres. These homes have been there since the 80s. Precedent for this zoning was in place before many residents built homes on Maybert. All residents on Maybert drive by them as they come and go. Our request is not setting a precedent. but rather it's aligning with the future land use study for this area and the comprehensive plan. And we thank you for hearing us tonight.
Pamela Childers?
It's okay, my daughter said it all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, that's all the cards I have. Comments from the board? Commissioner Pritchett?
Yeah, Aaron, I was able to discuss a couple questions with you. I met with, I'm going to say Miss Marcy and Miss Pam. They came in and they were telling me their thoughts on the property, and we got an opportunity to look at them. And let me ask you a couple questions, because I called you after. As far as the future land use, you told me planning and zoning passed this. And can you tell me the stipulations? You told me they passed it and why.
The future land use has been Res 1 for many years. When the MIMS small area study was completed, there were no proposals to change the future land use designation from Res 1, which allows the 1 unit per acre at that time. So there's kind of a transition in the area. You can see on the map that shows that moving away from Highway 1 to the east, the future land use map designates that the density shifts from 1 unit to acre to 1 unit per 2.5 acres. And that change is just east of this property, but technically the proposed zoning is consistent with the future land use map.
And then I had also asked you, was this an unusual request? And you told me
it's really not. Ms. Marcy was correct. The most recent precedence is the parcel two parcels to the east. That was proposed in 2008. And they have more than 1 acre there, but they do have less than 2.5 acres with 1 single family home on it.
Okay, so I looked at it, and it kind of looks like it's a good fit, the area where it's at. And I understand the agricultural areas, and I would never force you to change what you have on your properties either. And 2.5 acres for a home and a mother-in-law home, it seems very appropriate. It's going to stay very calm. And so I'm probably going to vote to support this, but I wouldn't mind hearing from the other commissioners also. But
Commissioner Zanardi, you have the floor.
And that was my question, and maybe I missed it in the report, but I didn't see what the intention of the property is, because, you know, at times people look to subdivide. Yeah, come on up. People, if it's okay.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
You know, oftentimes people subdivide properties to sell and make money and stuff, and I just wanted to see what your intended use for the property was.
Yes, ma'am. As you can see, and I don't know if you've looked at the current surveys, there is a right-of-way straight up through the middle of this land, and we are currently working with surveying and mapping and Road and Bridge, and you will see us again on August 22nd about the compromise that we have made with Ms. Jackson at Road and Bridge concerning the vacation of this right-of-way. Our intention is pretty noble, I suppose. My family of 4 would like to build a home, and my mom lives alone, and we want to build a smaller home next door for her to take care of her. So that's it.
I apologize, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, it's fine, it's just, thanks.
Commissioner Barfield, you have the floor.
You know, I look at the map here, and I see where, you know, there's other RR1, but it seems like there's a lot more AU around than that. So what is the definition of being consistent? You know, that's my question.
You know, the requirement is to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. Whether or not our administrative policies regulate that we're consistent with the existing development in the neighborhood is I guess, a judgment call. So legally, I think the consistency is with the future land use map.
Harvard.
There is not a specific definition of consistency in your administrative rules, but they do direct you to look at the historical land use patterns and actual development and development approved within the last 3 years. So that's not overly helpful, but that's what the code has.
Jared, I'd like to ask you a question. Why do you think that if this proposal would interfere with you raising white-tailed deer and your yeah, please come up.
The proposal doesn't interfere with what I do.
Yeah, I need you on the microphone so it's on the record. Thank you.
It's certainly not going to interfere with my white-tailed deer. What it is going to interfere with is traffic, and I own 16 trailers, and when I come down that road, I take the whole thing. So we have a huge problem with the right-of-way, and the people with Road and Bridge are very familiar with my name, so probably not want to bring that up, because we're trying to deal with a property line dispute on encroachment of right-of-way on landowners, and me included is 12 feet. So if we stop and back up to what is officially owned by you guys and what's officially owned by us, you have a stated 8 foot left once you take away what you are using as your water base, your ditch. So with that being said, when we start to push that forward, what's going to happen? We don't have the infrastructure there for roads to accommodate 1 acre lots. The concern is what happens in the future. The concern is if this continues to be allowed. I mean, outside of Courtney Winstead's house, the last rezoning was done way before the property study by, I believe, about 12 years. So with that in mind, we look at what is recent. Everything up there from 2008 forward is supposed to be 2.5 acres, and that's the way that all land up there was divided at that time. All land was divided with everybody knowing that it's 2.5 acres. The infrastructure won't hold up. It's dirt roads. They require a whole lot of maintenance. We have drainage issues. That's a constant problem. It requires constant maintenance. One house on that, and they want to build a house in a mother-in-law's suites. According to the AU stuff, you are absolutely done with that. You can do that, but there's square footage requirements on their mother-in-law's house, and it's not going to accommodate their 1,800 to 2,000 square foot that they're requesting. That's the challenge. So right-of-way is the big thing. Drainage is the second. Land values. I mean, the guy just bought 60 acres, and you can throw a rock from my place and hit it. He's going to put 60 homes on it. I mean, he's a developer. That's what they do. The guy right across the street from me, he's got 4.2. Right now, he can't divide it. With this, he can.
He wouldn't be able to divide it unless he had permission from the board to do that.
Yes,
so
ma'am,
that's a big assumption to make.
If they can get it rezoned, he absolutely can divide it.
If this board would approve a 60.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. If this continues, then yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you, Jared. Any other comments from the board?
One question. When was this property bought? April this year?
Pleasure of the board.
No, I move to approve the zoning to change the zoning classification.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second the motion, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. No, I was just going to make one more comment that, I think each thing comes to the board for a reason, and obviously I would never sit up here, and I can tell you right now, if a guy comes up here and wants to, with a 60-acre development, I'm not going to approve 1 acre lots. I mean, I don't think anybody on this board would do that, but I think each circumstance is unique, so that's why I'm going to support this.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Passes 4-1. Commissioner Barfield is the nay vote.
Chairman, the last item on your agenda is item 4P. It's a proposal for a change of zoning classification from SR to AU. This is for the Eric and Amanda Obloy property. It's 1.06 acres located at 165 Gator Drive, North Merritt Island.
Okay, Mr. Ratterman, you're up. And Mary Gilbert. Looks like H. Mary, you're next.
Good evening. My name's Jack Ratterman. I live at 568 East Hall Road, Merritt Island. This issue is of particular interest to me because I have friends that live on Gator Drive that will be used by this commercial interest. The applicant's trying to place an amusement park in a rural community. This will cause a huge increase in traffic, especially when there's only one road in and out. Will the applicant follow county rules and regulations after they get their zoning? Their past history indicates they won't. My understanding is they have a huge fine that they have not paid. They've been given subpoenas and they have not come to court. It's not compliant with the local community or residents. If it is, then you tell me how an amusement park, petting zoo, airboat rides, swamp buggy rides, gator farm, vineyard, wedding chapel, zip line, hay rides, kayak, and swimming hole will fit in this community. You know, the only thing probably that's not there is, no, I was going to say a gay nudist colony. So,
Yeah, let's leave that part out.
okay, so I don't see how you could say yes to this. You know, there's lots of little kids that live in this community. You know, he's been aggressive to the people that are already living there. You know, so, you know, I just don't see how this is a fit. Thank you.
Mary? And Chris Minerva will be next.
Mary Hilberg, 3780 Sierra Drive. This time I'll talk much faster and be quick. I've been off my feet. I've been away from you for a while. This request is not compatible with the area. The applicant, when he bought the land, it was zoned SR. It's part of the community, an established community. He has his piece of property, that piece of SR, he's using as his driveway, which is fine. But putting other things on it, putting huge billboard signs on it, putting other animals on it, and cages, putting anything else on it, is not consistent with the law. So, in the opinion of the North Merritt Island Special Advisory Board, and I'm chairman of that, and I'm also a member of North Merritt Island as well. We're elected by the people there to represent them, so that's why we're there. And I would respectfully request that you deny this request because of the impact on the community, the negative impact on the community, and the unnecessary aspect of it. There's no need to change it. Thank you.
Chris Minerva. And Martin Weber will be next.
Good evening again. My name is Chris Minerva. I'm representing the North Merritt Island Homeowners Association, P.O. Box 542372, Cocoa, Florida 32920. Our association cannot support the request because it conflicts with the future land use elements of administrative policies of. It's a long list. Policy 3, incompatibility with the existing land uses of 3A. Criteria A is hours of operation, noise levels, traffic, site activity, diminishing enjoyment and safety and quality of life in existing neighborhood. I mean, if you lived on this cul-de-sac, and it's a barrage of a party, and it's commercial. I mean, it's Disneyland, it's shrunken, but anyway. Policy 3B causing material reduction in value of existing abutting developments. Policy 3C, historical land use patterns. 3C2, actual development over the preceding years, 3 years. 3C3, development approved within the past 3 years, but not constructed. Administrative Policy 4, Criteria A, adverse impact of an established neighborhood with traffic intensity and commercial activity. Policy 4, Criteria B, point 2, the commercial use of non-conforming to the residential surrounding area. Administrative Policy 5, Criteria B, the physical quality of the road system being deteriorated. Policy 8.1, consideration of the character of the surrounding land. Policy 8.3, negative impact of this request on traffic and established character of the surrounding property. It's all the same. Policy 8.4, incompatibility with existing land use. 8.5, inappropriate consideration of public welfare. Okay, I'm going to read this. Under general standards of review, 2G, proposed signs interfering with the use and enjoyment of adjacent and nearby properties. Under the factors to consider for rezoning this request, the Homeowners Association has taken the following into its consideration. Number one, the character of the land use surrounding the subject property, the impact of this proposed zoning classification on available projected traffic patterns, and established character of surrounding property. Number 4, incompatibility with existing land use plans. And number 5, inappropriateness and consideration of public safety and welfare. If you lived on this cul-de-sac and you bought on a dead-end street, this is, quite abusive. I mean, I don't live there, but I certainly understand that. And they came in way after everyone else was there. I appreciate your consideration and all the work you do. Thank you.
Martin Weber. Is Martin Weber still here? No? John Siddall?
My concerns have already been addressed.
Okay, thank you, sir. Patsy, I assume, is the same? Betsy. Betsy Siddall? Okay.
Good evening. My name is Betsy Siddall. A little nervous. I reside at 3991 Dundee Drive. I don't know why I'm upset.
Don't be nervous. We don't bite.
I practiced this. I'm opposed to this rezoning request. When we purchased our home in 2009, we had every reason to expect that the only use in the community would be residential. As for the 24 acres which remained undeveloped behind our home, given that when the subdivision was originally designed, it was all part of the same parcel, leaving us no reason to think that the remaining property would not eventually be developed into residential parcels. The fact that it was a farm in the past was not an issue, as we have no objection to a quiet farmer farming for their own sake. What we do object to is inviting the public through a residential community in what is a blatant abuse of the agritourism law, a law whose intent was to provide bona fide farmers with supplemental income. It was never intended to be a determining factor of whether they succeed as a farm or not, nor as the primary source of income. The applicants have gone far beyond farm activity, turning their property, as you have heard, into an amusement attraction, increasing activity tenfold, as depicted in the drawing you should have received in my original packet in May. I was going to address Administrative Policy 3, but that's been taken care of, so I'll leave that. I have stated in the past, and will state again today, the applicant's lack of due diligence should not constitute a consequence for their neighbors. We've dealt with this man for 2.5 years. I promise you there would be livestock next to our home. Since the arrival of the applicants in our neighborhood, we have lived with constant disruptions which interfere in ways large and small with our right to quiet enjoyment of our property. In my discussions with various staff members in planning and zoning, there was a suggestion of a binding development plan. I am opposed to this for several reasons. Firstly, it's my understanding that a BDP is not truly binding. And secondly, and most importantly, the applicants have a clear history of noncompliance which began long before they purchased this property and continues even now, despite substantial fines which have been accruing since December of 2015. For these and reasons stated by others, I respectfully request that you please protect the character of our community by denying this application. One additional thing, Mr. Keith Braun is a neighbor. He intended to be here today to speak, and work has prevented that. He, late in the afternoon, sent you all an email stating his objection. I don't know if you saw it, so he asked me to please make you aware. Thank you.
Patty Lacely? How badly did I do that last name?
Nobody ever gets it right. It's pronounced Leslie. Hi,
Okay.
everybody.
Just tell us your name and your address, please.
Patty Leslie. I live at 3999 Dundee Drive, and we also own the property at 3997 next door. It's undeveloped. Previously, you all received a packet. On the first page of that packet, you will see Exhibit A. The green portion indicates the location of the proposed rezoning. The areas highlighted in yellow indicate all the residents who either sent a letter objecting to the rezoning or they signed a petition. The breakdown is as follows. There are 24 signatures on the petition and 6 letters. There may be more I'm not aware of. The areas marked by an X are vacant or unoccupied homes. You will notice that directly to the north, west, and northwest of the green section are residential homes, all within direct sight of the proposed rezone area. All the other yellow highlighted areas on Dundee Drive and the most easterly section of Gator Drive have line of sight to the rezone area. You can clearly see the people most affected by that parcel are Gator and Dundee Drive. On Exhibit B is a printout of a Facebook post generated by Adventures in Paradise in May. You will notice no less than 12 amusement attractions planned for that location, presumably the reason for the rezoning request. The applicants wish to erect signage advertising them. 2 of those activities would likely involve alcohol. Based on the number of activities they plan to engage in, one can logically assume that the property they wish to rezone will be used to advertise their business. As proof of this is Exhibit C, a rejected sign application dated 11/22/16, in which the rejection was based on the fact that the proposed sign was on property zoned residential, and to go forward with any sign construction, they would have to apply to rezone it. That parcel is in our residential neighborhood, and we don't wish to live in the middle of the applicant's theme park aspirations. Specific objections based on some of the suggested guidelines are impact on services such as roads and schools. All roads leading to Adventures in Paradise are residential. They were not designed for the type of commercial traffic likely needed to sustain the planned activities in Exhibit B. The applicant's wedding barn website indicates maximum capacity of 200 people. So potentially, on a continual basis, 200 cars would be entering and exiting our residential neighborhood. Only now, those exiting guests have potentially consumed alcohol. And that is only referencing the one wedding traffic, just one of the 12 activities listed in Exhibit B. The amount of commercial delivery vehicles that would be likely needed to deliver goods and services to sustain these 12 activities will be detrimental to our streets. They were not designed for such. They were not designed for the cumulated impact of sustained commercial traffic. Compatibility with surrounding land use. As indicated in Exhibit C, the purpose of the rezoning request is so the applicants can construct a sign that would not, by any stretch of the imagination, be compatible with the existing surrounding land use of that area. Consistency with the character of the area. Other than the current illegal signage the applicants have installed, there are no commercial signs on Gator or Dundee Drive because they are residential streets. So to maintain the consistency of the area, it would not be appropriate to allow commercial sign accomplished only by this rezoning request to be constructed on that property. In conclusion, we hope that the petition signatures and written letters are adequate proof of the objection to this rezoning request. If by some chance the collective thinking leans towards the notion that the property in question is of so little consequence that approval would be forthcoming, please consider the converse notion. If the property is of so little consequence, consider ruling in favor of the 30-plus people who oppose this rezoning application.
You have 30 seconds.
Thank you for your time and consideration. Any questions? No?
Darlene Hunt. Thank you, ma'am. That's all the cards that we have. I don't.
Young lady in blue helped me fill it out. My name is Dennis Wilson.
Could you quickly fill out another one then, sir? Because I don't have it. Oh, and I'm sorry, I do. I have one. Dennis A. Wilson, 139 Gator Drive. Come on down.
Thank you. Dennis Wilson, 139 Gator Drive. I'm here to speak in opposition of the proposed applicant's rezoning paperwork. Short story, we live in a neighborhood. There is no commercial activity. I'm not sure if you guys have been down the street to see what's going on, but my house is immediately adjacent to the piece of property in question. Up until last weekend, there were two signs that were about the equivalent of your dais, maybe twice as high, two of them. And my house would be equivalent to the back of the room. So when I drive in my driveway every day, I have two monster signs that are on this gentleman's property in a neighborhood. And it's my understanding that the original judge's injunction from over 2 years ago still has not been fulfilled. As was stated before, these fines are accumulating daily. They haven't been paid. I'm not sure who's monitoring that to try to enforce that. But last weekend, he did take down these two signs. And in its place, he put up a singular sign that's maybe 3/4 as wide as your dais, but still just as tall. So instead of two monster signs, now there's one semi-monster sign next door to me in my neighborhood. Be nice if you guys would ride down to North Merritt Island and see what we're talking about. So I'm opposed to this for two reasons. Number one is, as we've said and heard from previous cases tonight, this is a slippery slope. If this rezoning is approved, the people that have spoken, we know what the next step is. It's going to be used as a commercial driveway to the current commercial property that's being operated in our neighborhood. A quick reference. Last weekend, the owner of the property sponsored a festival. You may have heard about it. It was promoted on a couple of billboards, a couple of electronic signs on businesses, and he even parked his swamp buggy, which is about as big as the dais and about as tall, on Courtney Parkway at the entrance to our neighborhood promoting the festival. Saturday morning, I mow the yard. I counted no less than 80 cars that passed my house and turned in at the direction of the two monster signs next door into the festival. It really would have gotten out of hand if the rain didn't wash it out. So one day, 80 cars. Recently, I've spoken to Mr. Obloy, who is the owner and the applicant, and I voiced my concern directly to him that the second objection is alcohol. What's happening back there is not an ag farm. What's happening back there is a commercial, as been described, amusement park. How is he getting these permits? Yesterday, as almost every day, two huge Florida Power and Light bucket trucks pulled out of his facility and, shook my house as they went by the front yard. So there's some overhead transmission work being done down there to support this commercial activity. All of us have presented reams of evidence, including his own Facebook page. And if you go to I did a Google search, the dumb way to do it. If you go to his Adventures in Paradise or Dolphin Paradise Tours, two properties, they tell you what's happening back there. So I don't understand how a commercial property, excuse me, a commercial event, a money-making commercial event, can take place in the middle of my neighborhood. So I'm running out of time. I can see the clock, but I'm going to fill it up. Again, it's the slippery slope. Chris said it best when he said the reason we have planning boards is not for today, but it's to avoid disasters in the future. I witnessed a monster disaster with that Christofoli case. They should be ashamed for putting a 48-unit development right there across the street, a mile up, across the street from us. I'm not sure what to tell you guys as far as your vote, but anyway, turn this guy down, this application. Thanks for your time.
That's all of our cards. Commissioner Barfield, you have the floor.
I'd like to ask the county attorney to explain the agritourism and what our limitations are. So I have to watch my temper on this because it's really it's amazing how this has been just used against us so much. But if you can explain that, please.
Yeah, code enforcement has been out there any number of times, as you all know. I'm not going to go through the entire litany of events, but basically there is an agritourism statute that provides an exemption for many of these activities. It is probably not the original intention of the legislature when this went through, but it is a rather large loophole. And so, although we have obtained an injunction, the injunction is limited in its scope, and we're hoping perhaps someone will change the statute.
So before I go any further, I'd like to tell everyone that's from Merritt Island, if you do not like this, you need to get in touch with your legislatures and go to Tallahassee because there's serious loopholes in this thing. And it's really totally kept us in check where we can't even go on site to inspect for health concerns. It's totally irresponsible. My next comment is this. We can look at the picture in here, and obviously this is so incompatible with the neighborhood. It's right up next to it. And let me tell you a little background. So the applicant put a sign up there knowing it was illegal. It's enforcement action. So he knows it wasn't permitted, couldn't get permitted. So now he wants to change this so he can put the sign there in the people's backyard or side yard. It's just completely incompatible. There's so much I could say. This is just entirely wrong. But this is what I am going to say from a legal standpoint for this. I make a motion that we deny this. It's not compatible with the surrounding residential area. It's not at all compatible. The traffic impacts to the community is just, as the gentleman said, and that may be an understatement, and sometimes from the other things he's had there, it could be a lot more. And the impacts to this poor neighborhood is just not acceptable. Both of these reasons are reasons to deny, and I make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion to deny this. Do we have a second?
I'll second
we
with
have
discussion.
Commissioner Zanardi.
I'll second with discussion.
Okay, you have the floor.
My concern is our hands being tied on this because unfortunately we can't do a lot as far as a county goes other than cite what we can see. What's being done obviously is not legal on that property, and I think if we were to pass this would just perpetuate the activity. And it's unfortunate because here is this nice subdivision and you guys are set with these set of circumstances, even though, again, it's sort of out of our hands with that current zoning of that property. I feel bad for everybody that lives in there, only because I'm sure that's not what you signed up for when you bought this property, and obviously you were there first. So I will, again, second the motion, and I agree with Mr. Barfield that this is not compatible with your neighborhood.
Any other comments from the board? I would like to just weigh in. Staff, if this guy's putting up signs, doesn't he have to have permits for these signs? And we have no recourse if he's putting up illegal signs?
No, he does have to have a permit for the sign. The Code Enforcement Act, there is a Code Enforcement case open for the sign, but it was the put on hold to allow him to come into compliance if he could get the zoning changed where we could do a permit. So if you, with your denial, then we will reactivate the code enforcement case, and then that will be going forward.
Please do. And I will note for the record that Mr. O'Bloy is not here he made this application and he didn't even show up. So take that for what it's worth. Okay, any other comments from the board?
Mr. Chairman, if I may on that, we did get a email from his attorney requesting to be tabled to this date. So I believe that there is a notice that this action was going to be heard by you all tonight.
Thank you for that. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor to deny this, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you for all being here.
Excuse me, would you like our office to make findings of fact?
Please.
Okay.
Please do.
When's the next county commission meeting for zoning? What's the date?
It looks like September 7th.
September 7th. Okay, we'll come back to you on September 7th with the findings.
Excellent. Okay, we have no unfinished business, no new business, and no comment cards. So we'll go right into board reports. Frank Abate.
No reports.
Eden Bentley. Jim Barfield.
No report. I'll make it Tuesday.
John Tabaya.
No report, Mr. Chair.
Christina Znardi.
No report.
Rita Pritchett.
No report.
I do have something to say. When we were in D.C. last week, 4 of the commissioners were there, and I spoke to the Secretary of Labor after he gave his talk, and he really expressed an interest in manufacturing capabilities in the different counties. And for those of you that aren't aware, every commission, county commissioner was invited from the state of Florida to go to D.C. last week to hear from 6 hours worth of directors. Mr. Trump made them available to us. The purpose of that was, in his words, as conveyed to us, was that all politics are local, but in D.C. they've forgotten that local doesn't just mean in D.C. So he is inviting, we were the second state that he invited, he's inviting all the commissioners from all the states to come and hear the same presentation that we heard. And the message was loud and clear that they want to hear from the commissioners, they want to hear from the grassroots, and they are going to make available to each one of the commission offices the numbers, the appropriate numbers that we can reach out to them. So having said that, the Secretary of Labor, I told him that I would get the manufacturing information that he requested. I didn't have it off the top of my head. I've worked with the EDC. We've crafted a letter, and we will be sending that letter to the Secretary of Labor. Also, Senator Nelson was not available. We did hear from Senator Rubio, and I'm reaching out to the 2 of their offices regarding our request for support and funding for the Emergency Operations Center. And I've crafted that letter, and I will be sending that off probably on Monday to Senator Nelson's office and Senator Rubio's office, requesting them to aid in our funding. And I made note to both of them that the state of Florida and the Florida governor have acknowledged our need for upgrades in the EOC building, and so hopefully that gets moved forward, and at some point in time we can get this EOC off the ground, because we're woefully behind in the size and the quality of emergency operations center that we can provide for the citizens of this county. So with that, this meeting is adjourned.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.